There's a lot of resources out there discussing the 5 conflict handling styles, which are universally referred to as competing, accommodating, avoiding, compromising, and collaborating. Gamblin and Mitchell state in their 2015 article, Understanding and Managing Conflict Styles, that everyone has a conflict style preference, and knowing your own preference and the preference of others can help us better manage workplace conflict. Conflict in the workplace is inevitable, and poor communication is often a major contributor to that conflict. I agree with McCarthy, who in a 2015 article, Tap into Your Emotional Intelligence to Resolve Conflict, she states that conflict can be difficult because it triggers our acute stress response. Responding as competing, aka fight, or avoidant, aka the flight, typically will bypass the rational mind, making it difficult to think and act logically. So let's look at the 5 styles more closely. The competing style attacks, likes to argue and debate. Typically those with this preference are competitive, assertive, and can be uncooperative at times, causing them to make others want to avoid conflict with them altogether. In their 2015 article, Gamblin and Mitchell note that a big disadvantage to this style, aside from being very caveman-like, is relationships can be damaged beyond repair, or create an avoidant culture where nothing can ever improve because no assumptions are tested. The accommodating style is pretty unassertive and cooperative, pretty much the polar opposite of the competing style. Those with this preference will typically give in or even change their opinion to match the competing person for the sake of harmony. This style can also result in false solutions and create complainers in the workplace. The avoidance style, which according to a 2013 breakthrough in marketing video, is the most physically and emotionally stressful style. It's also, unfortunately, the most common. There are many people who will do just about anything to avoid being active in a conflict. The person exhibiting this preference is usually non-committal and is unsure where he or she stands on the issues. The collaborating style, which resonates with my personal personality and leadership approach, blends assertiveness with cooperation, always looking for the win-win. This approach requires a lot of development, practice, and skill. I believe this is the emotionally intelligent way to engage in healthy conflict. McCarthy also points out in the 2015 article mentioned earlier that emotionally intelligent people will make calm statements of fact, ask questions, and seek to understand the other person's perspective. By explaining the outcome one hopes to reach and asking for others' ideas and solutions, you set the stage for better resolution. The final style is compromising, which typically carries with it an objective of finding a quick, mutually acceptable solution that partially appeases both parties. These folks can be intimidated by direct confrontation and will seek a quick middle ground solution. Again, this style presents a risk of losing out on innovation and positive change. In Shu, Hernandez-Bark, Van Quaquebach, Hassiep, Frigg, and Van Dyk's 2013 article, Gender Differences in Leadership Role Occupancy, the Mediating Role of Power Motivation, they point out that leadership traits such as decisiveness and assertiveness are typically attached to male leaders due to the greater motivation for power. This statement aligns with Blackburn, Martin, and Hutchinson's 2006 Journal of Women in Educational Leadership article, which highlights that characteristics associated with females are typically nurturing, passive, sensitive, and compassionate, while men are described often as self-reliant, dominant, hard, impersonal, competitive, and assertive. Do any of those words sound familiar from our review of the 5 conflict styles? While some of this is rather stereotypical, I believe these assumptions of gender can often ring true, leaving many female leaders in the accommodating and compromising role, while their male counterparts are competing and, based on my experience, often avoiding as well. An entire dissertation could be given about the cultural impact of conflict resolution, but in a nutshell, culture plays a significant role, particularly if one is working in a global environment. In Morris and Fu's 2000 research paper, How Does Culture Influence Conflict Resolution?, they posit that the tendency for negotiations in Anglo-American cultural settings involve much more overt competition in comparison to those in the East Asian setting, which typically involve more harmonious, compromising behaviors. A leader who exhibits the ability to shift both negotiating and conflict resolution styles to align with the objectives and those they're dealing with at hand will find themselves facilitating much more effective resolutions.